The champagne flute trembled against my lips as Dad's words cut through the dinner conversation. "She's my disappointing daughter. I apologize for her." His laugh echoed across the white tablecloth, bouncing off crystal and silverware. "My son, Ryan, now he's the one who makes me proud." The CEO across from us chuckled politely. Around me, the entire banquet table joined in, a symphony of laughter at my expense. My throat constricted. The chandeliers overhead suddenly felt too bright, the room too hot. I gripped my water glass so hard I thought it might shatter, focusing on the condensation against my palm to keep from standing up and walking out. What Dad didn't know was that he'd just humiliated me at my own event. "My name is Sophie, I'm 28, and I'm a tech innovator. This is the story of how I made my father see me for the first time in my life." 6 months earlier, I'd approached the Montgomery Foundation anonymously, pitching them a sustainability platform that could revolutionize corporate philanthropy. They'd loved it, funded it, built tonight's entire gala around it. And Dad had been bragging for weeks about scoring an invitation to the most exclusive charity event of the season. He had no idea his disappointing daughter was the reason anyone cared. I sat in my navy dress, too simple for this crowd apparently, while Ryan preened in his designer suit. My brother hadn't worked a day in his life, living off Dad's money and connections. But he was the golden child, the pride of the family, and I was the furniture. The table conversation moved on, business deals, stock portfolios, Dad's voice growing louder with each story, performing for the silver-haired executives surrounding us. I pushed food around my plate, counting down the minutes until I could escape to the bathroom and breathe. Then the lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage at the front of the ballroom. The foundation's director approached the microphone, and Dad straightened in his chair, assuming his business partner was about to be introduced. He'd been networking toward that connection all night. "Ladies and gentlemen," the director's voice rang out, "please welcome the visionary behind tonight's initiative, the creator of the AIRE sustainability platform that's raised over $8 million in global donations this quarter, Miss Sophie Chen." My photograph filled the massive screen behind the stage. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. The entire ballroom rose to their feet, applause thundering through the space. Mom gasped. Ryan's head whipped toward me, mouth open, and Dad just stared. At me, at the screen, back at me, his face draining of color. I stood slowly, my legs steadier than I expected. Every step toward that stage felt like shedding skin. Years of being invisible, being dismissed, being told I'd never amount to anything. The director continued as I walked. Miss Chen's work has transformed how corporations approach social responsibility. Her platform connects businesses with verified nonprofits, tracks real-time impact, and has been adopted by 17 Fortune 500 companies in just 4 months. When I reached the podium, the applause softened into expectant silence. I adjusted the microphone, looking out over hundreds of faces I'd only seen in business magazines, and then I found my family's table in the crowd. Dad still wasn't clapping. "Good evening," I said, my voice clear and calm. "It's surreal standing here tonight. I never imagined the girl who was told she'd never be good enough would one day address this room." Warm laughter rippled through the crowd. Understanding. Solidarity. "But here's what I've learned. Your value isn't determined by who sees it. It's determined by what you build when no one's watching." I launched into my presentation, explaining how AIRE worked, the impact it had already generated, the vision for scaling globally. The room was rapt. Questions came rapid fire. The CEO Dad had been courting earlier asked for my card. A venture capitalist wanted to schedule lunch. And through it all, Dad sat frozen at his table, hands gripping his napkin like a lifeline. When I finally stepped off stage 40 minutes later, the foundation director intercepted me. "The press is requesting interviews, especially about your partnership with Dalton Tech's green energy division." Dalton Tech, the company Dad had spent 6 months trying to get a meeting with. "Of course," I said. "I'd be happy to." I glanced back at the family table one more time. Dad's face had shifted from shock to something I'd never seen before. Fear. Fear that he'd miscalculated everything. Fear that he'd dismissed the wrong person. For the first time in my life, he couldn't tell me to be quiet. The foundation staff directed me to a side room where the press had gathered. The interviews lasted an hour. Camera flashes, notebooks, questions about innovation and female leadership and disrupting traditional philanthropy models. A journalist from Forbes asked how I'd managed to outperform 3 corporate think tanks with more resources. By not underestimating the people everyone else overlooks, I said, meeting her gaze evenly. She smiled knowingly. Anyone in particular? Let's just say sometimes you need to be called disappointing before you realize how capable you actually are. During the Q&A, I'd referenced being called disappointing without naming names, but the foundation staff who'd witnessed Dad's comment at dinner had quietly confirmed the context to a Bloomberg reporter. The quote went viral by midnight. By morning, "Daughter dismissed at gala becomes evening's breakout star" was trending. Tech magazines called me for profiles, investors flooded my inbox, and Dad's phone, according to Mom's text, wouldn't stop ringing with people wanting introductions to me. After the press interviews concluded around midnight, I finally returned home. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I sat in my apartment scrolling through messages. Congratulations from old professors, collaboration offers from nonprofits, interview requests from podcasts. The validation felt surreal after years of silence, but the message I kept returning to was from Ryan. Dad won't come out of his office. Mom's worried. He texted me from the estate where he still lived. The estate was a 40-minute drive from my apartment in the city. I showed up at the family estate the next evening, documents from the foundation tucked under my arm. The house felt different, quieter, smaller somehow. Mom was in the sitting room rearranging flowers that didn't need rearranging. Ryan sat on the couch scrolling his phone, not meeting my eyes. "He's in his study," Mom said softly. "He's been there since we got home last night." I found Dad at his desk staring at his computer screen. Articles about me covered the monitor, Forbes, Bloomberg, TechCrunch. He looked older in the desk lamp's glow. "You humiliated me," he said without looking up. His voice was hollow. "In front of everyone I've spent years building relationships with." "No," I said quietly, stepping into the room. "I showed them who I am. You humiliated yourself the moment you called me disappointing in front of strangers." He finally looked at me, really looked at me. I didn't know. "That's the problem, Dad. You never asked. You never wanted to know." "Everyone's calling me," he continued, his voice breaking slightly. "Investors, board members, they all want access to you. They think I've been hiding some genius protege. They don't know I didn't even know what you were working on." I sat down across from him. "I tried telling you 3 years ago when I first started developing AIRE. You said it was a waste of time, that I should focus on finding a husband instead of playing entrepreneur." He closed his eyes. "I said that." "You did. So I built it anyway, without your money, without your connections, without your approval." The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of disappointment. "I'm sorry," he finally whispered. "I'm so goddamn sorry, Sophie." Those were words I'd never heard from him before. The apology didn't fix everything. It couldn't erase 28 years of dismissal, but it cracked something open, a possibility that maybe, eventually, we could rebuild. I didn't hear from Dad for a week after that. No calls, no texts, just silence. Then one morning, a cream envelope appeared under my apartment door, his handwriting on the front, precise, controlled, the kind he used for important documents. Inside was a single page. "Sophie, I've spent this week reading every article, watching every interview, trying to understand the daughter I failed to see. You built something remarkable. Not because of me, but despite me. I told myself I was preparing you for a harsh world by being critical, but I was just projecting my own insecurities onto someone who never needed my approval to succeed. You've become everything I pretended to be, respected not for appearances, but for substance. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that watching that room rise for you reminded me of why I started in business 40 years ago, before ego replaced purpose. I'm proud of you. I should have said it sooner. Dad. I read it 3 times, sitting on my apartment floor, tears blurring the words. This was what I'd wanted my entire life, his pride, his recognition. But now that I had it, it didn't feel triumphant. It felt sad. Sad that it took public humiliation for him to see me. Sad that he'd wasted so many years refusing to know his own daughter. Marcus and I had spent months collaborating on ARE's launch, and somewhere between budget meetings and venue planning, a genuine friendship had formed. That evening, I met Marcus at the cafe near the foundation offices. He'd become a friend through the months of planning. "You're not celebrating," he observed, nodding at the letter beside my cup. I shrugged. I thought his approval would fix something. It doesn't. It just makes all those years of silence hurt more clearly. "Recognition from people who dismissed you is complicated," Marcus said gently. "It validates that you were right, but it also confirms they were wrong, and that means you lost time you can't get back." "So what do I do with this?" I held up the letter. "Whatever feels authentic to you. You don't owe him forgiveness just because he finally apologized, but you also don't have to carry his regret as your burden." The next morning, I framed the letter, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that people can change when reality finally breaks through pride. 2 weeks later, my phone buzzed with a text from Dad. "Sunday dinner. Just family. I'll cook." I almost laughed. Dad, who'd always insisted kitchens were for the help, was cooking. Curiosity won. I drove to the estate that Sunday evening, half expecting this to be some awkward peace offering that would only make things worse. But when I arrived, the dining room looked different, softer. Mom had replaced her usual elaborate centerpiece with simple candles. Ryan actually made eye contact and nodded. And then Dad emerged from the kitchen wearing an apron carrying a casserole dish. "Lasagna," he announced, awkwardly proud. "It's probably terrible." It wasn't terrible. It was imperfect. Uneven layers, slightly burnt edges. But it was the most human thing I'd ever seen him do. During dinner, he cleared his throat. "I met with the board yesterday. We're donating half my shares in Chen Enterprises to your foundation." I nearly choked on my water. "You don't have to do that." "I do," he said firmly. "You taught me what real value looks like. Not profit margins, not reputation, purpose." Mom smiled, her eyes wet. "Your father's been reading every article about you. He has them all printed and organized in a binder." Later, as I helped her clear dishes, she whispered, "I'm sorry I never stood up for you. I was too afraid of his anger. But watching you succeed without needing us showed me what real strength looks like." Ryan smirked. "He cried reading the Forbes profile." "Ryan," Dad warned, but his tone was gentle. "For the first time in my life, we weren't performing our roles. We were just a family. Messy, imperfect, and finally real." A month later, I was in my office when Mom called, her voice shaking. "Your dad collapsed during a board meeting. After 2 days in the hospital, the doctors cleared him to go home with strict orders to reduce his workload. He stepped down as active CEO, transitioning to chairman while his COO took over daily operations. He's stable, but the doctors want him to rest." I drove straight to the hospital, my heart hammering. Seeing him in that bed, monitors beeping, oxygen tube in his nose. It shattered something in me I didn't know was still fragile. He smiled weakly when he saw me. "Don't look so scared, kiddo. Takes more than a little heart incident to get rid of me." But he pulled a sealed folder from the bedside table. "Open this if anything happens to me. Promise." Don't talk like that, I whispered, gripping his hand. I'm at peace with things now, he said quietly. Thanks to you. He recovered over the following weeks. 3 weeks after his discharge, his lawyer called requesting a meeting. Life returned to normal, or what passed for normal in our newly rebuilt relationship. Then his lawyer called me in. Your father updated his will, he explained. He wanted you to know before anyone else. The document took my breath away. Half of Chen Enterprises, the empire I'd once been deemed unworthy of, was now in my name. The share transfer he'd mentioned at Sunday dinner had been finalized 2 weeks earlier. I'd received the legal documents confirming the donation the day before his collapse. He'd also transferred ownership of the family estate to my foundation, with instructions to convert it into a nonprofit incubator. I want the place to mean something again, his note read, not just symbolize ego. That evening, I visited him at home. He was reading in his study, glasses perched on his nose. You gave me everything, I said softly. He looked up, smiling. No, Sophie, you gave me back my conscience and a reason to be better than I was. 6 months later, Chen Enterprises hosted its annual charity gala, the same ballroom, the same chandeliers. But this time, I wasn't sitting in the shadows. The director introduced me as Sophie Chen, CEO of the Chen Foundation, Innovator of the Year. The applause that followed wasn't polite, it was thunderous. As I stepped onto the stage, I saw Dad in the front row clapping harder than anyone, tears streaming down his face. Mom dabbed her eyes beside him. Even Ryan looked genuinely proud. My brother had started working with the foundation the month before, finally finding purpose beyond Dad's shadow. I spoke calmly, my voice steady despite the emotions swelling in my chest. I was once told I was disappointing because I didn't fit someone else's vision of success. I believed that for too long, until I realized your worth isn't determined by who validates it. It's determined by what you build when you refuse to stay small. The room rose to its feet, a standing ovation that felt like vindication, like closure, like peace. Afterward, Dad hugged me in front of everyone. You were never disappointing, he whispered. I was just too blind to see what was right in front of me. Outside the venue, the night air was cool against my flushed face. I looked up at the city skyline, everything finally quiet. The revenge had never been about humiliating anyone. It was about reclaiming the voice they tried to silence and using it to build something that mattered. And as I walked to my car, applause still echoing behind me, I realized the respect I'd fought for was finally, truly mine, because I'd earned it on my own terms.